Good afternoon, YouTube friends. This is Jim. Thanks for visiting my channel, Finding God's Embrace. This video is about how God spared me from a very serious train accident that I was involved with a Toyota Corolla. Sit back, relax, and I just want to share with you how this life-altering event helped shape my life for what it is today. Well, in 1988, I was only 28 years old. I was self-employed, and I had my own business, basically a tree service. And so, little did I know that day I would be spared from a horrific accident involving a Toyota Corolla and a Via Rail train. So basically what happened was I left my house in the evening, probably around supper time, and my wife and my 4 children, they were out of town at a birthday party for a nephew. So I was by myself for a couple of days, and then I was going to meet up with them towards the end of the weekend. So this particular day, I was driving down a gravel road, and I had an old Toyota Corolla, rickety old car, and I don't think there was any carpet on the floor, so it was just steel. And as I'm going down the gravel road, the stones are hitting the bottom of the car. I've got the radio on, and I'm sort of not paying attention. I'm heading out to quote a job. And so, to my right in the field was a cornfield. And it was a rolling cornfield. And ahead of me was an unmarked railroad crossing. And all down that railroad crossing, there were hydro poles. I don't think they're for hydro. They're probably from years back. They weren't probably in use. And they weren't really super tall. They were taller than what a train is, but they weren't super tall. But I couldn't even see them as I'm driving down the road because of the rolling hill and the cornfield. So, daydreaming along, heading out to quote a job, and I heard this noise. And when I heard it, I looked to my right. And what did I see? A train beside me. Like right there. I didn't see him way down the tracks. I wasn't trying to race him and beat him over the crossing. I was just oblivious. I know they're supposed to honk their horn, and he probably did, but I didn't hear it until that one horn. And when I heard it, my natural instinct was, what was that? So I looked to my right, and there was a train. I'm not going to say I could reach out and touch it. It wasn't that close. But it was like right almost beside me. Well, when people get in that situation, one of the first things they want to do is just lash out, like swear, whatever they do. They just, like if a plane's going to crash, people panic. If the roof's falling in, people panic. I saw that train, 2 words came out of my mouth. It wasn't blasphemy. It was, "Oh Lord." I believe that was my prayer. "Oh Lord." I was so close to that train that I didn't even have time to touch the brake pedal. And right there on the road was a scuff mark of my car getting ripped off the road. A Toyota Corolla, very small, compact car. Well, that train took me 500 feet down the tracks. And I didn't really experience much of it, because the second I saw that train, I was unconscious. I mean, the impact of a Toyota Corolla heading down the road, doing probably gravel road, probably only doing 80 kilometers an hour. The Toyota Corolla plowing down the road at 80 kilometers an hour, and a Via Rail zipping by. I don't know how fast it was going, but it was open concessions, fields. So I'm sure it wasn't going slow. Well, the second I hit that thing, I was out cold. That thing took me 500 feet down the tracks. And I was out. When I opened up my eyes, I looked up, and the conductor of the train was leaning over me, sweating, because he just stopped that train way down the tracks and ran all the way back. And right beside him was the ambulance attendants, which tells me I must have been out cold for 20 minutes to half an hour, because just to get from where the ambulance is to where I am, it's got to be a 20-minute drive, and then they had to get there. So 20 minutes to half an hour, I was out cold. So what happened was, the law in Canada is that you have to wear a seatbelt. That's the law. But back in 88, it wasn't the law. Back in 88, it was like, you should wear a seatbelt. Now it's like, you must wear a seatbelt. So I didn't have my seatbelt on. I was a bit of a rebel, I guess. I like to defy the rules a little bit, maybe. So I never had my seatbelt on. Well, believe it or not, when I'm driving towards that train comes down, and we met right at the engine. I met right at the back of that engine, and it threw me out of the driver's seat into the passenger seat. And when it threw me out of the driver's seat into the passenger seat, with that car spinning around all the way down the tracks, it got that steering wheel and it shoved it right into the driver's seat. Had I had my seatbelt on, yeah, it might not have been too good for me. I seen what that seat looked like when that steering wheel went into it. So it threw me into the passenger seat, and just the weight of me being thrown over and pushed into the passenger seat, the seat busted, and I was laying down. I was laying down out cold. So I opened up my eyes, and I looked up at the ceiling, and there was all this blood on the ceiling, which that's not a good sign when there's blood on the ceiling like that. So I reached my hand up to my forehead, and what had happened is, when it threw me from the driver's seat into the passenger seat, my head hit the mirror, and the mirror busted, and little tiny pieces of glass got stuck in my head, and it must have bounced off the ceiling. I don't know. But there were no scars, no stitches, no injuries to my head. Just little tiny pieces of glass. So now I'm laying in the passenger seat. I cannot feel my legs. And it's like, that's not a good thing. I've been out cold for 20 minutes, half an hour. I can't even feel my legs. So I said to the ambulance attendant, like, are my legs there? He says, yeah. I says, well, am I going to be able to walk again? He says, yeah. Very calm and everything. I thought, oh, trying to reassure me. I had no idea what was going to happen when I sat up. So I'm laying there. He puts his hand behind me and lifts me up forward because they got to pull me out. And the whole car is destroyed. The engine's gone. Transmission's gone. Wheels are gone. Front's caved in. Back's caved in. And I'm sitting in a box, laying down in the passenger seat. So he helps me up, and I sit up, and I take a look, and the firewall came in and pushed tight against my legs. I pushed tight, and my legs were crammed up into a little space. And of course, being there for half an hour, I lost feeling in my legs. You can imagine if you kneeled on your legs and you just sat there for half an hour, like, or whatever. If your leg falls asleep or whatever. That's essentially what happened to me. So I had a cut on my leg, and the cut was about this long, and it barely broke the skin. The amazing thing is that when I sat up and I looked, both feet were sitting perfectly on gravel, on the railroad bed, on gravel. Not on the floor of the car, on gravel. When that car stopped, it could not have stopped at a better time. I honestly believe that when I called out to God and I said, "Oh Lord," I honestly believe that was my prayer and He answered it. So, they take me down the railroad tracks. I had a sore neck, and I was in that stretcher. And you can imagine what it's like to take a stretcher on wheels all that distance down railroad tracks. I mean, it was very, very uncomfortable. So they put me in the ambulance, and they take me to the hospital. They put me in that stretcher, and I'm laying on a stretcher in the hospital, and they take me to the sink, and the sink is just a little bit higher than the stretcher, and they hit my neck on the edge of that sink, and my neck was already so sore, and they hit that there, and it's like, wow, that hurts. So they're proceeding with x-rays and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, it just so happens that the doctor who was on call was a very good friend of ours. He went to our church. And so he called my wife. And he says, "Virginia, I just want you to know that your husband's at the hospital and he's been in a motor vehicle accident." Well, my wife was like beside herself. So let's back up a speck more. The police officer at the train track said to me, he said, was there anybody else in the car with you? Because with me having 4 boys, back then seatbelts weren't quite as much of an issue as they are now. Well, they weren't an issue at all. So I had car seats, and I had backpacks, and I had school papers and crayons, and that stuff was spewed all over the place. And as I'm being wheeled down the tracks, I can see these guys out in the ditches on both sides of the tracks looking to see if there's anybody else in the ditch. But anyways, back to my story. So I'm in the hospital, and he says to my wife, he says, your husband's been in a motor vehicle accident. So he got her calmed down, and she asked the question that really should have been asked. She said, how are the people in the other vehicle? Well, our doctor didn't really come out and want to say it, so he sort of worked around it, and everything's fine. But no, how are the people in the other vehicle? Well, it wasn't a vehicle, it was a train. Well, she lost it. So anyways, my brother-in-law loaded my wife and my 4 kids in his vehicle and brought them all back home. They kept me overnight. And the next morning, I got up and I walked out of the hospital. I didn't have a car anymore. My one son, he was quite young. He says, Dad, are you going to be able to get the car fixed? There's no way you're going to fix that car. Like, there was no tires on it. There was no engine. There was no transmission. There was nothing. It was gone. It was just a big hunk of scrap. So that's just one of my stories. I honestly believe that God intervened that day and spared my life. And like I say, I'm just trying to have more of a personal contact with my subscribers and my people that visit my channel. So I just want to share this story. So anyways, you guys have a great day. And just remember, you're not in total control of your life. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. You never know what today is going to bring. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next video.